Hey, how are you? Can you pass me that computer? That's Jones.
Oh.
We'll just spread out here. Put him way down the end.
Yeah, we got a lot of paraphernalia. I do.
No, no, just that. Some of that's Corey's. Just,
This is Joe?
yeah, that's Jones.
It's somebody else. Okay.
I think it's
Yeah.
Jones.
Is that yours? No, that's what I. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, that is. Oh, yes, they put all this, they put all this stuff on this. Yeah, I was like. You explain me all your technology.
Good morning, everybody. We'll try to get this moving along.
It's
Mike?
Friday, okay?
We're all set, Madam Chair. We're recording and we're on YouTube Live.
Thank you. Thanks. So first up is DOAG, and Commissioner, we see that you're online. We heard that you're a little bit under the weather, so we're glad that you're online and not with us. Can you hear us, Commissioner?
Senator Wilson, he's letting me know that he can't hear you,
Okay, that's
that you're muted through the Zoom link.
no.
Senator Austin, I can hear you.
Yeah, it's not us, it's
Him.
It's him. Tell him to unmute himself. Can you hear us now? Brian? Is your computer muted?
I'm troubleshooting with him.
Okay.
I swear he's usually a little more tech proficient.
All right, now I can hear everybody.
All righty, very good. So Commissioner, I don't know if you want to say a few words and then we'll ask some questions.
I just want to first apologize that I'm not there in person, a little bit under the weather here. But we have, for the record, I'm Brian Hurlbert. I'm the Commissioner of the Connecticut Department of Agriculture. We are joined by Nathan Wilson, the department's Director of Operations, and Dr. Kaylee Royston, who leads our government affairs. Happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding the proposal that's before you, the governor's budget, or give an overview of Connecticut agriculture.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. So I have a couple questions. One, I was talking with some of the dairy farmers the other day, and they're saying that Massachusetts is losing a significant number of their dairy farms. When I look online, I don't see that. Is that going on in Massachusetts? Do you know, thus putting some pressure on us to keep as many dairy farms as possible?
I will say that at the national level, dairy farms continue to decline. The actual farms decline. The number of cows being milked holds relatively steady, which essentially means that farms are getting larger and smaller farms are having a more difficult time making it. We have been trying to, so I don't know specifically, Senator, but I would imagine that that is the case. We have been working really hard with our dairy industry in order to make sure that our programs and the USDA sponsored and regional programs that are there for additional support for dairy in order for them to modify their business model. Selling commodity milk on the market puts you at the whims of the Federal Milk Marketing Order, which, as we know, has been low for the past year and a half. So this is where having some on-farm processing, the home delivery model, where farmers can recoup more of the dollar per gallon than they receive from the commodity market, is important, and we've seen that. We have 6 home delivery of milk products in the state. 5 years ago, we were at 0. We have multiple processors that are setting up and making cheeses and yogurts we funded the opportunity for some dairy operations to make ice cream blends. So it's a significant challenge, especially in a high production cost region like the Northeast for a dairy farm. That's why we are really trying to work with farmers. I should also add, when outside of the dairy product, anaerobic digesters, another way to recoup funds from a product that did not generate any revenue to a revenue maker for them. And we have a few anaerobic digesters that we've been able to support, whether it be in the planning stage or with a direct grant.
So, is there any way that you can get us the detail of dairy farms in the eastern part of the country,
Yep.
England, just the numbers so that we can see where we stand? And then secondly, the senior food vouchers and the WIC program, where do we stand on usage of those?
We took the approach this year, if you'll recall, the Farmers Market Nutrition Program. We received ARPA dollars, I believe $150,000 in ARPA. We received federal dollars, and then we received a state allocation. So last year, we were one of 8 states to receive a grant to move our Farmers Market Nutrition Program from a coupon voucher program to a debit card style program. That came with some bumps, I'll be honest. We had some contract issues with the vendor, so we got off to a couple weeks of a late start. And then, as we're all aware of the rain that happened almost every weekend, I believe it was 19 of 22 weekends since June that had rain, really depressed farmers market sales across the board. And so we went at the end of the season, we did a series of pop-up markets where we knew where we had high redemption rates and abilities, and worked with a couple farmers, senior resource centers to create pop-up markets. So we drew down the ARPA dollars first, then the federal dollars, recognizing that the state dollars could lapse and be rolled over or be rolled over. So our redemption rate was down, but we have on a percentage basis, but our dollars are still pretty consistent.
So thank you. Representative Walker?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, and great to see you, Brian, and I hope you have a long rest over the weekend. So I know
Thank you.
the weather just doesn't give us a break, or neither do the diseases. But anyhow, good to see everybody. I want to ask just about our farm to school project that we've been working on, which Representative Gibson has been championing so heavily. So I just wanted to find out, how are we doing? And are there any pitfalls that we still need to address?
I will say that our Connecticut Grown for Connecticut Kids program is doing an amazing job. As you'll recall, Representative, and I should say thank you. Good to see you as well. I hope to be better by the end of the weekend myself. But if you recall, we started this program a few years ago with $250,000. 2 years ago, the allocation was increased to $500,000. And last year, the allocation was increased to $1 million for the Connecticut Grown for Connecticut Kids farm to school programming, which includes schools, child care centers, family child care homes, or any other organization that administers farm to school programming, including farmers. And last year, so over the course of the 3 years, we've grown from 13 awards in FY22 to 32 awards in FY23. And I think it was last week we were able to announce that we made 53 awards to schools, early childhood education centers, and the such across the state, which was really exciting. I want to point out, in Representative Walker, we had last touch base at the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus, where we had been talking about our DEI work at the agency. We have taken this seriously. We have been translating all of our materials. We bring a translator to our office hours. And I'm really proud to say that we received 2 applications that were in Spanish. And so our efforts are working. We are reaching different populations with these grant programs. And a lot of work to do, clearly, but the process has begun, and we are moving forward. I will also say that those 53 awards were for the $1 million for direct farm to school programming. We also awarded $2 million for the 8 container farms. Those are the farms that are indoor hydroponic operations that are retrofitted container storage containers. So more to come on that. I'm really excited about that and appreciate the work that went into creating that program. We were able to spread those awards out across the state. I'm excited to see what comes of them.
Thank you. And I'm glad you brought up the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus meeting, because we did have a conversation with you about how are you working with the Black and Puerto Rican farmers in the state of Connecticut. And you mentioned some of the things. I'd like to get an update from you on those specific issues.
Would you like us to follow up and set up some time on that, Representative?
You can elaborate now if you'd like.
Okay. Yeah, so we launched the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Working Group in 2021 with a recognition that we need to do a better job at the Department of Agriculture of reaching different populations. If we are going to continue to grow Connecticut agriculture, we need to increase who is growing food in our state, where they are growing food in our state, how they are growing food in our state, and what they are growing in our state. And there was a gap there between our recognized abilities and reach and the growing population of and just for everybody's awareness, I'll use the term BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, People of Color is the term. How do we reach our BIPOC farmers and give them the tools that they need? And this was also an acknowledgement that it's not just the Department of Agriculture, it is an industry-wide effort. So it needs USDA, it needs Farm Credit East, it needs University of Connecticut Extension Services. So we had 50 people volunteer to dedicate their time and energy, knowledge, and experiences to create a roadmap for what the department should be doing. They gave us 21 recommendations. I believe there's 39 sub-recommendations. So there was a long list. There was some low-hanging fruit, like translating all of our materials that we could do. We also have been creating priority areas on our grant programs to identify BIPOC, female, and veteran farmers as priority awardees for our grants. We also recognize that new and beginning farmers, which many of our BIPOC farmers are, don't come to the table with the same knowledge of programming or trust that some legacy farmers, farmers that have been working with USDA for generations may. And so, more technical assistance. They don't have land that they can just transition onto from one generation to the next. So we've prioritized urban agriculture as a way to help them secure land in our grant programs. We are continuing to work down those programs and those recommendations. We talk about it on a weekly basis as I meet with my grants team. And importantly, we hired a new grants and contract specialist last year. And the first thing I did was I gave her our DEI working group report. And I said, you need to read this. You need to understand the recommendations that are in here. And as you're thinking about our programming, think about what we need to do to incorporate these. We also, one of the high hurdles that we saw was that we have a match requirement on a lot of programs, and that's great if you have capital. But a match program doesn't really help you when you receive a grant if you don't have the money to put down. So we've been reducing the match, being more flexible with what the match can be. So people still have skin in the game. But instead of 50%, sometimes it is a 25% match, and that could include your labor, so your time. We're valuing that. So the goal is that it's
So
easier.
Commissioner, I just
Yeah.
want to jump in because we have a short time. I would appreciate if you provide us what your plans are in trying to expand the
Sure.
education to the BIPOC, the farmers or potential farmers that we have in Connecticut, so that we can see how we can make the industry grow in a number of ways to help you. So thank you, and I look forward to hearing what your plans are so that we can move that agenda. So thank you very much. Have a good
Thank
day.
you.
Up next is Senator Hartley.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and good morning to our DOAG people and Commissioner. So I'll be very quick as I know the clock is ticking. Commissioner, I see it in your eyes, so I know you need to dial back. But if you could provide for us in our next round a skinny on the 490 program, I plead ignorance on that. I really want to understand that. And then Commissioner, I want to explicitly give a shout out to you about working in my community with Veracity Harvest, which is a regional food hub, as you know, in the poorest census tract of the city. And, we've, gone through scaling issues. So we look forward to continuing to work with you on that. I guess my other question relates to the senior food vouchers. We're always very concerned that we are maxing those out. And I know, during COVID, there were issues, but I guess I'm wondering, and you could provide this to us going forward, basically where we are we getting those out? Is there left unmet need? Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Representative DiCaprio, followed by Representative Dathan. Representative DiCaprio.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner and team, for being here today. Just a couple of questions. Being a new member on the committee here, I was just wondering if you could just go over what your goals, your overview and goals are for the marketing for the PA 490 program. Could you just elaborate a little bit on that?
So the PA 490 program, for those who aren't familiar, is a land use program administered by the municipalities. So it is a reduced property tax rate. So it's not a state program, but it is the state statute that allows for farms and open space to receive a reduced property tax. Representative, I'm not sure what exactly your question is regarding this, but we do promote it. We do follow up with advisory opinions for landowners whose 490 application was denied by a town. We have one of our ag marketing inspectors go out and actually survey the property to see if it is a farm. Do they have equipment there? Do they have barns and sheds? Do they have product? And we send an advisory and opinion into to the town, to the requester, who can then use it in their planning and zoning and land use boards to demonstrate that either it is or it is not a farm. Generally, the ones that I'm signing are confirming that the operation is a farm operation.
And that's communicated back to the town folks there.
That's the landowner it has the responsibility to communicate it back to the town. I will say it is an advisory opinion, and some assessors take the opinion well, and some only a couple in the state decline to use that opinion.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Representative Dathan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Commissioner, for your presentation today, and your write-up, and your team is always wonderful to work with. So thank you for that. I wanted to follow up with Senator Austin and Senator Hartley's comments on the WIC program. I noticed that we have flat funded in 24 and 25, but we do have an increase from previous periods on the senior food vouchers as well as in the WIC. I'm wondering if we could get a trend of the people that are served with those amounts over the 22, 23, 24, and your estimate for the fiscal year 25 would be great to see. I'm concerned with rising food prices, what that means for the actual number of people who are getting served. Also, because now we're doing these via debit cards, what happens to if at the end of the period, if there's unused funds on those debit cards, how does that work? Do they expire?
Yes, the program runs on a calendar basis. We would pull the money back. I will say that now that we have moved to the debit card system and an electronic payment system, that means we have a lot more data. Previously, we did not know who on the individual basis, who was receiving the vouchers and where they were spending them. And now we have a lot more granular data to use and to understand. And that's one of the reasons why we're able to do these pop-up markets in certain areas, because we knew we had high redemption rates there. I don't know that we have enough data to give you a trend just yet, but we can certainly give you some of the high-level information that we've received from the course of last year.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. Can I ask another kind of maybe detailed question? Because these are debit cards, what sort of controls are in place to ensure that people aren't using them outside of the food markets that they're supposed to be used? They aren't using it to go to the local store and, not buying things that are part of the intention here.
Yeah, great question. They're a limited use debit card, so they only function at approved farmers market sites. We actually did increase from farmers market to actual farm stands this year, recognizing that because of the weather, some people might not be getting to farmers markets. So it's got a pretty tight window as to where you can use the card. So it is not eligible to be used at a restaurant or grocery store.
Got it. So I'm thinking in my head, it's kind of like the FSA card that many folks get with their insurance that, has limitations, funds expire. One last question, detail oriented on that.
I'll come back.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Nice try. Nice try.
Flipping it in. I'll keep my hand raised though.
Representative Zawistowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative Dathan's question leads right into the question that I had. So this works out very well. I just wanted to find out what the balance would be if you have that information. If not now, if you have that for the working group, what the unused balance is on the debit cards for the senior food voucher program. That would be very helpful to know.
I don't care.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I hope you appreciate my brevity.
I do. Up next is Representative Harrison.
Thank you for the opportunity, but I think everybody else was asked my questions, so thank you.
All right, Representative Gibson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be very brief as well. And I apologize for not my camera on. I'm not feeling too great. But hey, Commissioner, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. I want to thank Rep. Walker for mentioning the Farm to School program. Thank you, Rep. Walker, for your support in that, as well as Senator Alstein. And it's good to hear that the program is being very successful. This goes along with what Rep. Walker asked about the Black farmers. And this maybe not stay so with Black people per se, but more so inner city. Is there any way you could provide information as to the number of inner city and what inner city schools have applied and may receive grants from the program? And what are your plans to promote the Farm to School program in the inner city so that our inner city schools can take advantage of it? I think Rep. Dathan was talking about the cost of food a couple minutes ago. This is a great program, as you already know, raising our own food, cutting back on our grocery costs, learning about the environment and staying healthy. So if you can maybe provide that at some point in time, or if you have it now, that'd be great. And again, Commissioner, thank you for your support.
Thank you, Representative. And I will say, we were able to make 53 awards. We had 106 applications. So we can get a breakdown of where those applications came from across the state and get that back to you. We also have an advisory committee on the Connecticut Grown for Connecticut Kids program, and part of their job, it's in statute, the advisory committee is in statute, part of their responsibility is to help with outreach and promotion. So we've got a pretty good, diverse group of individuals on there that help us do the promotion. I mean, we are really over on the number of applications that come in versus the funding that we have. But we can certainly get that information for you, Representative.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Hartley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Be very brief. Yes, Commissioner, you're talking about the 490 program and the advisory opinion that is issued in this process. In the example of, for example, fields that are grown for the purpose of haying, would that come under the 490 program?
Yes, Senator. Anything that is listed in General Statutes 1-1Q, which is the definition of agriculture, would be eligible. I want to be just remind everybody here that cannabis production is not listed. It's expressly stated that it is not agriculture. So cannabis production would not be eligible for 490. But there's a whole list of activities that 1-1Q allows for, and we reference that in our letters that 1-1Q states these. We see these activities. So yes, haying would be an eligible 490 program.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Dathan?
Thank you, and Representative Salzowski answered or asked one of my questions, but one other question, very detailed about those cards. If they're sort of like the FSA cards that I was kind of thinking about in my head, would the individual be able to retain the card and then in the next year, money is automatically added so that people are able to use the funds faster? I know in the past, there's been delays at getting money out, and I'm wondering if these cards are able to facilitate the funds getting to folks faster. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative. Yes, great question. Yes, the individual does keep the card, and then we will do communications directly and or through the distributing organization. So if it went through a local senior center, we'll remind them that next week or 2 weeks the program starts, and people should get their card out, and they should be they should be ready to use it. So yes, we will not be issuing new cards on an annual basis. You'll be able to use yours. Now, if you lose one, we'll make sure that we have some available for folks, but the intent is that you use it each year.
Great. And if you can just share when those marketing things start, you can share it with us so that we can share it with our constituents so that they're aware of all these things. That would be great. Thank you for your presentation, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Absolutely, will do, Representative.
And I have two last things. One, the Native American communities, we have 5 that are state recognized, 2 are also federally recognized. Does your agency do work with any of the Native American communities?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, we have a great relationship with the Mashantucket Pequot Tribal Nation. In fact, I just received an email from their new director of their Department of Agriculture. I'm asking for a letter of support for a proposal that he's putting before the Tribal Council for a processing facility, which I will certainly write and support. That relationship is the strongest. We are working with the other tribes to establish a better relationship or a relationship. But we've had some really great success with the Mashantucket Pequots, and working with them. They've been recipients on a number of grants that we've been able to award. We were supposed to get down there a couple weeks ago, and looking to reschedule that just to have a regular cadence of conversation. What's going on? What's working? How can we help? What are their plans? They're doing an amazing job. I give their team a lot of credit for their investment in agriculture, not only for the tribe but for the community. I'm hopeful that we'll continue to have that relationship grow with additional programs.
Thank you for that. And my last kind of statement, I put in a bill this year that went over to finance that would provide $20 million on a set aside unbonded dollars that the administration, in concert and collaboration with its agencies, for an emergency funding mechanism. Would you find such a fund helpful, in particular with the climate change problems that we're seeing out there?
Thank you for that question, Senator. I haven't seen the language to that bill, but I will share. 2 years ago, the legislature and the governor's agreed upon budget included $14 million in climate smart agriculture and forestry programs, 7 of which was bonded dollars, 7 of which was carryover. We had a tremendous amount of interest in those programs. The $7 million that was bonded, we thought we would have a problem awarding that much money. That's the largest one-time program that we've had. We were able to make 12 awards. We received over 50 applications, I want to say it was $54 million that was requested. So there's a tremendous demand out there from the ag community to invest in their operations, to be more climate resilient, to increase production techniques, purchase equipment that would help them with that, or do infrastructure work. So I think there's a need out there. Again, I haven't seen the details of it. We are still waiting for the reports. Those are multi-year projects. But from what we've seen so far with projects that have been implemented, Connecticut farmers are very interested in doing climate smart work on their farms to make sure that they're around for the next few generations.
So I firmly believe in helping out with climate resiliency, but this one would be for emergency use. So, for example, when the farms were flooded up and down the Connecticut River, this would be designed to help out with natural disasters, other kinds of emergency issues. Scotland lost 3 bridges. We saw farms up and down the Connecticut River that were devastated and ended up helping out there. These would be for those kinds of things to help out with the emergency and perhaps make sure that that emergency wouldn't happen again. So that's what my intention is with this. And I'm hoping that with the number of natural disasters that we have seen happen over the increasing each and every year, that this would give some availability of resources for the administration to decide how they could help somebody out, whether with a low interest or no interest loan, or the capacity to deal with repairing bridges for travel, or there was some washouts of some rail beds, that kind of thing. So it happened all over the state, not just in any one area, but the intention is to give some flexibility to the administration to help out in emergency situations. And I think that we do have to do more with the climate resiliency component of things. So thank you. I don't see any other questions right now, Commissioner. I think that you can go rest and go on to DOH.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
You too. Hi, Commissioner, how are you?
Good morning, Senator Austin, State Representative Walker, members of the committee. Thank you for having us here. My name is Taylor Mosquera Bruno, the Commissioner for the Department of Housing, and with me is Deputy Commissioner Maggie and some of my senior staff behind me for any support that we may need. We submitted our brief in writing and supporting the governor's budget. So we're here to respond or to respond to any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Commissioner. So I'm going to jump right into the homeless shelters. Representative Walker and I, at the end of the day, have been trying to struggle with the overall issue of homeless shelters. So when we put out grants, they tend to go to cold weather shelters, but perhaps our language has not been as clear. But we wanted to help out shelters broadly, not just the cold weather shelters with different issues. We would like to hear, what do we have for the homeless population relative to shelters? The cold weather shelters and then just shelters broadly that might be around 12 months out of the year.
Thank you, Senator, for that question. So I will start with some of the resources that were deployed this year was $5 million for winter weather. And you are right. We want to make sure that we provide year-round housing or emergency housing. We have been working with several service providers in a couple of cities where they are actually acquiring hotels, and with the support that we provide in the financial support, they are making those as a kind of transitional housing. I know some people don't like that word, but we do need to have some housing that can provide the services that residents need to be able to move on. We provided, in addition to that, about 2 months ago, we deployed $45.8 million. And that included some of resources in addition to shelter operations. We increased $3 million to the shelter operations. We also provided diversion money, thanks to you and some ARPA funds that the committee scheduled for us. About $3 million. We also provided $5 million in security deposit.
So before you go on, if you could tell me which those pots of money came from. So are they federal dollars? Are they ARPA dollars? Are they carry forward? Are they general funds? So that we get it in our head, the kind of dollars that you're able to put out there.
Sure. $3 million for the Connecticut Access Network was a portion of ARPA and CIA. Diversion money, $3 million, that was ARPA funds. Permanent supportive housing was federal resources. Rapid rehousing with the $4 million, which also are federal resources and some state resources. Rapid rehousing and the shelter operations, that is the majority is state resources. That was the $16 million. We also provided security deposit, and that is through federal resources that UNICEF that we have. And the hubs, $6 million that we put in was also from federal resources that we have, additional resources. And then what we have been doing, as I mentioned before, with some of the towns, is to provide financial resources, like in New Haven for a hotel, where we provided the capital resources to retrofit the hotel, and also operational resources.
So if you could get for us that spreadsheet that just details out those dollars, where they came from. And my second issue is relative to tiny homes. So I know in New Haven there was some tiny homes. I happen to be a fan of tiny homes because I think that it helps out in some areas where there is a genuine need. And I think having someone have a secure place to live where they can lock the door and have their own space is in many ways acceptable. I put a bill in a number of years ago that passed on what was affectionately known as granny pods. Apparently that's an offensive term, granny, but I am one, so it's not offensive to me. So I'm just curious, has the Department of Housing looked at some alternative kinds of housing relative to smaller structures to help out with the housing crisis?
So what we have been doing, as I mentioned before, was the transformation of hotels, but we also are providing resources to shelters to do micro units, which are the small units instead of congregate housing. And that is what we actually supporting and promoting a little more. And we're providing those financial resources to be able to do that.
And those micro units, are they fully functioning units with utilities and plumbing so that it has a bathroom and a small space to have a kitchen, or at least a microwave and a hot pot kind of
Yes.
thing?
They are double occupancy, but they provide that. And the goal is also to bring the services into those
For supportive housing?
for supportive housing, and a little more about the mental health and some addiction treatment.
Thank you. Representative Walker?
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good to see you all. I
Yes.
want to go right into something, a funding line item that you have, and I'm hoping you can explain a little bit of it, because I think I know where it's going. Is the ARPA dollars that are in there for a housing voucher application system? And I noticed that in one of the write-ups that there was a reduction in RAP to reflect case load. I have to get a little bit more detail on that, but I'd like to know what exactly is this housing voucher application system that's $1.5 million, and what's the expectation for this? I'm trying to find out.
Thank you, Representative, for that question. And the goal is actually to have a one portal of entry for people that are looking for vouchers. So we have been working with Connecticut Innovation. Actually, they have started a one-stop shop for people that are looking for apartments. So the idea is to have a portal where all the Section 8 or all the housing authorities can have and they can announce their vouchers so that a person can go into one system and apply to the different housing authorities. Is a goal that we have, and we have the vendor that will be helping us with that. So we think that that will really benefit a lot of the applicants when they're trying to find opportunities to apply for Section 8 to one place. Although there are many different housing authorities, we also need to work with them. So is the outreach to the housing authorities to be able to work with us.
Okay.
Yep.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Just to follow
Now,
up
who are
on
you?
your.
Who are you?
Brandon McGee, Deputy Commissioner.
Thank you.
Department of Housing. And just to follow up on your.
Yeah. Out of sight, out of mind, yeah.
Glad to be home. But to follow up on I think your initial question regarding the 1.5 million, that was last year's budget. And I think we were able to address that last year. Gentlemen, you help us regarding your RAP question.
Yes. You were able to address it?
Correct. You want to come up and respond?
Yes. Reluctantly.
Reluctantly.
I'm just going to point it out. Who are you?
Thank you, Representative Walker. My name is Steve DeLello, the Director of the Individual and Family Support Program here at DOH. And yes, correct. Last year there was a reduction of the RAP line budget by $1 million, but we were able to maintain full capacity within that program and still maintain turnover, refilling any vacant vouchers at that time. So we were able to keep the program moving forward in a positive direction.
So I hear what you're saying. When I'm out in the community, that's not what I'm hearing. They need more access. So the problem was was what that you fixed. That's what I'm always looking for solutions on why we do things. I mean, we do things because we're looking for something to change. So could you explain what happened and what does this do? That's what I was trying to ask with the application. So if we did have a reduction in the last year's budget, what is it that we needed to do to fix that? And is that by having a universal portal? Is that what I'm hearing?
So yes, Representative, one of the things that we're finding is that we need a central entry point for a lot of these resources. And so within the department, we're currently trying to address that issue. And if you allow us, we can follow up with a more detailed response to your question.
I would like to get detail. I'd like to know who the vendor is.
Yep.
And I'd like to know what's the expected time of it going live, and how are we training our housing authorities to? I'm not against it if it's going to help free up and provide access for more people,
Oh, yeah.
so that we can address the homeless population that we are starting to flood. Then I'm all for it, but I think we need to all know about it.
Mhm.
Because if I didn't read your write-ups, I wouldn't really know that much about it, and I think it's a good idea. So please, please, please give us the details and how we can all help support that. And I think I used a couple of my questions, so I'll come back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You did. Representative Sawastowski, who is jumping the line only because she really needs to go someplace, so.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the indulgence. I want to follow up on the ARPA funding for the housing voucher application system. I just want to get, if not for today, maybe during the working group. One of the concerns that I have is access for people that do not have a smartphone or computer. Some of the folks that I have talked to that have been concerned about trying to apply for vouchers is all they have is a regular cell phone with no special features. They cannot apply online. And there's problems if the callback system is a bit of a problem for them because they're trying to look for work and everything else. Anything that you could make this process easier, anything you could do to make the process easier will be very appreciated. Do you have any general ideas of how you're going to be handling this now, or is it something you want to talk about in the working group?
I think I would like to talk in the working group. I will get some of the information with the vendor that we have, but we also are going to be restructuring the way that we provide the vouchers. So it will be a good conversation and some feedback that I could get.
Yeah, I appreciate the time at that point. Thank you very
Thank you.
much. And thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Representative DiCaprio, followed by Representative Dathan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Commissioner and team, for being here today and sharing. Just the homeless services, could you, what did it look like 5 years ago compared to today? And if you don't really have statistics on that, is that something we can talk about in the working group? But I don't know if you have any general statements on that.
In general, we have seen an increase in homeless population. One of the goals that we have had is to continue building and producing more units so that people have access to affordable units. And those are for individuals between 50% and below of the area median income. So I will have to bring some of the information to the working group for the statistics that you asked for, if we can.
Okay, I appreciate that. I know, because we're seeing some problems like in even rural communities too. So there's probably increased numbers of folks that are kind of in the bad sort. So thank you very much. Thank you, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Up next is Representative Dathan, followed by Representative Harrison.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Commissioner, for being here today. It's always nice to see you and your team. I really wanted to explore how the Department of Housing is working with DSS to get an 1115 waiver for supportive housing. I am feeling like we are potentially leaving some federal dollars on the table that could support homelessness and other ways that other states like Massachusetts and New Jersey are looking at the sort of health-related social needs when it comes to housing and have filed waivers. Is there any sort of thoughts from the department on how we could utilize federal dollars a bit better to support our homeless?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Representative. And I'm glad that we're all thinking about how best to leverage existing resources and also resources from federal government. One of the things that we're extremely proud of through the Interagency Council on Homelessness is that we're working with our sister agencies to do just that. Figure out, number one, the intersectionality between housing and all of our state agencies. But most importantly, you speak of the waiver. And currently we are in conversation with DSS, their commissioner, and their entire team to figure out how to best align regulations, how to best align, our budgets and all of the criteriums that are in place on how we are to spend those dollars to better support those most in need. So we're in the technical phase of it. We just applied for a grant. Kudos to DSS, and we are in partnership with them.
Great. That's really helpful. Thank you, Brandon, for that explanation. My second question really is around unused vouchers. I'm hearing anecdotally that there are a lot of unused vouchers, housing vouchers in our state. Does the agency track this really by region? And is there things that we can do to support use of those vouchers to make sure they're actually helping the folks out there? And again, I'm hearing only anecdotal stories in my community that they are not able to use vouchers.
The big issue, as you know, is the lack of more housing, and is something that we have been working on. This past year, we completed almost 2,000 units across the state, very affordable units, and we have another 4,000 units on the construction. So we do provide flexibility to individuals that are looking for apartments. And Brendan, if you want to add a little more?
I'll defer to Commissioner. She actually said everything I think that's needed to be said with regard to our vouchers, and it's a very complex system. So I don't want to overgeneralize, but we've been able to really target this waiting list that we refer to. The department has done a great job eliminating that. But the reality is there are not enough units that will keep pace with the need, right? So that is just where we are. What are we doing proactively? We're working alongside private and public landlords to figure out how to provide technical assistance, how to work with them so that we can get people housed as quickly as possible. But the challenge is before us. We need to build more housing, and that is what the department is doing currently. But our vouchers are doing what they need to do.
Thank you so much, Brandon. If you can just provide the details of the vouchers that we have in the state, what we've issued, what have been used, and what are unused. And if we have an idea by sort of region in the state to really see where the problem is so we can understand that as a committee, I would appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Up next is Representative Harrison, followed by Senator Hartley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Commissioner. My question is, we keep hearing that you're doing a lot to add beds to the program and housing. Can you please provide for us the number of units and or beds? And I'd like to see the data. So how has it improved from, say, 5 years ago, pre-pandemic? What were our numbers looking like? What do they look like now? Just to see how we're spending this. I talked to the providers and they're seeing an increase, and they're seeing an increase in different populations even than what we used to see. So additionally, if you could put some breakdown into that, what's covering our seniors, what's covering families with children, and happy to get it at whatever time and certainly by the working group, so we have time to look at it before we start our deliberations. Thank you.
Yes, we can bring the information to the working group. Just gonna give you a little bit of example of what we're doing with trying to prevent families from being into a shelter. We have a program called Head Start on Housing, where we provide a voucher to a family that is housing insecure, and they have a children in Head Start program. So that we provide the voucher, and Head Start program provides the case management. This is a collaboration with the Office of Early Childhood. And I will certainly provide the rest of the information that you requested at the working group.
If it's possible, can we get the data before the working group so we can look at it ahead of time?
Sure.
Thank you.
All set, Representative? All set. Senator Hartley?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for being with us, and also being so responsive when we have to connect on constituent issues and likewise. So, just the macro view, for when we get into the smaller groups, if you can just give us an analysis of your carry forward money and ARPA dollars, any unspent ARPA dollars. And I'm interested also in ARPA dollars that are tamping down, ending, and if there's anticipated voids that we're going to be facing. But then to Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner, how do you respond to the issue of the out-of-state landlord? And do we have any demographics that shows us what the concentration is? Now, in my city, for example, 60% of the rental property, of all of our property is rental. And it seems like, a market, a significant number are out-of-state landlords. And then there's the problems that result because they're not in the community and so forth.
It's a very complex question, Senator, because yes, we have seen an increase in landlords out of state. At the same token, some of that will have to be dealt at the local level with the cities. And I don't really have the answer for your question on how do we prevent outside investors to acquire properties and to rent it to in what other regulation. There are some things that some cities have done, like in New Haven, they have any landlord that has more than 5 units, I think, and they don't live in those properties, they have to register with the city and the city will inspect those units. So there are some things that locally can be done. You want to add it? I don't know if I answered your question, Senator.
Well, you're right. It's very complex, and I'm not necessarily saying that, we, it's just about guardrails. It's about helping communities, to be ahead of this situation for the betterment of everybody, property owners, renters, the community.
Senator, I think just to underscore the commissioner's comments regarding how complex this is, a lot of these out of state, I'll say, landlords that are coming in, a large percentage of them are what we refer to as not so good landlords. And
That's my
unfortunately,
sense.
yeah, and unfortunately, and I don't want any of our local municipal leaders to get upset, but a lot of enforcement has to take place from the local level, right? And really tracking down these landlords, some of whom are, probably all of them are private landlords, which ties our hands slightly as a state agency, one of many public housing authorities, to enforce. I don't even want to get down the rabbit hole of not having enough human personnel to do enforcement from a state agency side. But to answer your question directly, it's a combination of all of the above that we've been talking about, making sure Secretary of State is involved with the permits and tracking down who benefits financially from these properties, making sure we're supporting license and inspectors on the municipal level. And so these are all broad recommendations, but the reality is we've got to support our municipal leaders with this growing, very systemic challenge that we're faced with, and making sure out-of-state landlords, and this is just one side of the coin. The other piece is just land banking, if you would, not the traditional sense of land banking, but land banking of these properties and just charging outrageous amounts of rents because they can, right? So this is a longer conversation for the working group, but both the commissioner and I are open to any recommendations that this committee and others might have to help address that.
Yeah, and on the state level, if I might, so, I mean, a lot of times when you try to search down the ownership, you know, you get these zombie LLCs.
Yep.
And we need on the state level, I think, to be on top of that and clean that up.
I agree with you 1000%. And we will continue to work with the Secretary of State and other stakeholders. And this could be one added item to our agenda on our interagency council.
I would hope so. And then just for the working group, if I might, can you just bring us a précis of the status of the Time to Own program?
Yes, and I can give you just a brief. Today, we have more than 3,000 first-time home buyers. 52% of those are minorities, and I will certainly bring a dashboard for that program.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? So Representative Reyes?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Commissioner. My buddy Brandon, good morning. Good to see you guys. Very quickly, and thank you very much for testifying this morning. I'm very interested in, from the housing perspective, on what's going on exactly on a state level. And you don't need to answer this now. We can get the feedback later. Everything that's accessible in every program and every option available to veterans, people who have served this country. That's the population I'm looking at, because a lot of the homeless people that I've encountered, believe it or not, are veterans. And I'd just like to hear your perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. We can certainly bring you a little more detail. Overall, it's also complicated, right? Because we have the state level and the federal level. At the state level, Veterans Affairs is also part of our interagency council. And at the last meeting we had, they mentioned that they have about 30 beds available. And we were letting some of the service providers to know that there are beds available. Sometimes is that we really don't know what is in the pipeline or what is the accessibility. On the federal level, I will give you a little more details from our service providers.
Thank you, Commissioner. And my follow-up question is in the state of Connecticut, is there any shelter, any place at all that's just for veterans other than the VA?
There's one in Bridgeport, Home for the Brave.
Home of the Brave?
Home for the Brave.
Home of the Braves in Bridgeport.
And just for anybody who sits on that subcommittee, we've been trying to get them a $250,000 grant allocation every year. So that's something that they do a lot of very, very good work. They'd have a home for women veterans, which is really not around. I actually went down there with Senator Gaston, and so I think that that's something that, and I can connect you with the executive director if you're interested in seeing what their program is.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner.
So,
You're welcome.
Representative Porter.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning. Good to see you all. I just wanted to see if there's anything that the Department of Housing is doing, your agency, to address the staffing needs of providers that actually need money to recruit and maintain staff around homelessness. I mean, we know this is what we all are singing, especially post-pandemic. And I can speak for New Haven and Hamden. There's a tremendous need, and 82% of the current homeless response system employees can't even afford a one-bedroom apartment, right? So they're facing the same kind of crises that they're actually on these phones trying to address for other folks. So I'm just curious to know, and I know there's several agencies that are responsible for playing a role in this, but what specifically is DOH doing to help address the staffing needs of the providers that are trying to provide homes for people on the streets?
Thank you for that question, Representative. What we're doing, as we mentioned before, the governor encouraged us to work together. So we created the Interagency Council. But before that, I have been working with service providers. And in February, the end of January, there is a working group, about 30 service providers from executive directors all the way down to lived experience, that met and had a retreat specifically to talk about this. And no staff from anybody but a consultant, helping them to help us to understand what are the needs that they have. And some of that was staff. It was the system that we have that is not working well. It perhaps was working 5 years ago, but it's not at this point. And also technology and the capacity of the hubs, which we opened up last year for people to be able to actually talk to someone in a caseworker. So we are working with this group. Is kind of the working group that brings us all the information to the Interagency Council, where my colleagues, we're going to be working on what areas we can tackle right away, and then come out with a plan that we will present it to the governor by the end of the summer.
Well, I'm really excited to hear that, because this system definitely needs to be stabilized, especially when we're talking about financial stability of those that are actually providing the services and are a paycheck away from themselves being homeless. So thank you for your efforts. They're very much appreciated. And thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Representative Walker?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I know for the second time, I just, as we were talking, one of the other things I wanted to ask, and we can talk about it in the work group, but with the rising cost of rents that we are experiencing in Connecticut, I don't know if anybody asked this, but how is that impacting the strength of the RAP certificate in being able to provide us with the services that, the funding that is needed for people to acquire housing? And what are we doing about that? Don't have to answer, but I need to know it when we get in, because I'm seeing the decrease in the RAP certificates issue. And I understand what you're doing with the portal, but that doesn't affect the cost of the rentals and what we are offering people with the RAP. How is that reducing the amount of people that we're able to actually serve? So I really would like to hear about that too. Okay.
We will get that information. Actually, we have been working on getting the information from our vendor, and we will bring it to the working group, or we will send you that information.
Okay. When you say your vendor, who's that?
Jay D'Amelia.
Oh, okay.
Because the fact is that rent has increased, right? So,
Yeah.
And the number of people that we have in the wait list, but we also have recycling vouchers or certificates, both from the RAP and from the vouchers. So we have asked to give us a report and what will be the implications, because we also have some families that have moved into high opportunities where rents are a little higher. So we are.
If they're in Connecticut, they're a lot higher. Okay.
Yeah.
Not a little.
Yep. Thanks.
Yeah. Yes.
Representative, if I can just kind of round it out a little bit more, the value of these vouchers or certificates, they're not keeping pace with the increase of rents. And so within our department, we're working to research and look at different states on how they've handled this. But the reality is the value on a voucher or certificate, again, is not keeping pace. And so we're working with community stakeholders and others to figure out. We all know money is but we're being proactive.
Money is what?
Money can solve a lot of things. But we're working within the governor's budget. But one of the things that I just wanted to make sure what we do.
Yeah.
One of the things that I just wanted to make sure was said, that we understand that the value of these vouchers, while they are helping, many of the people who are in need the most aren't able to secure a unit.
So I really want to hear about that in our working group. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Any other questions? Representative Porter?
Just started her. You did. I'm gonna blame you. I'm gonna blame you, Madam Chair. Because you brought back something to my remembrance. I've had a couple of, the population of homelessness people is definitely shifted, especially post-pandemic. And I know in my district, I have been dealing with families, moms and children that are living in cars. And some have gone through 211 and been placed in shelters and refused to be housed in the shelters because they felt they were unsafe, unclean, many issues at that level. Also, an older population of seniors with some serious mental, physical disabilities or challenges, I should say. I'm just curious to know, what DOH is doing to address this shift in population, because it's very concerning, especially when we're talking about families, women and children, and men and children. In one instance, a dad and some kids living in a car, and they're employed. I have a couple that is employed, living in their car, can't afford these high rents. They're actually being pushed out and being forced to live in their cars and on the streets. Just really curious about how you're addressing it currently or looking to address it, and how is it, how can we realize this in your budget? Like, where can we find some of these solutions?
So in the short term, what we're doing, as I mentioned before, if those kids that are in early childhood, we can provide a voucher and help them to find a home. Also to kids that are in the elementary school, we just set aside 100 vouchers to help if there are kids that are homeless and they go and they're in the school system. The long term is part of our interagency council, where we're looking a little more into what are the people that we're going to serve, what type of housing do they need, because our goal is to be able to serve those that have high level of care, as you mentioned, that are seniors, and also then the families that are living paycheck by paycheck, which are the affordable units that are 50% and below of area median income. And that is our main focus, is to continue building those units. So with the interagency council, it's about how do we bring those services all together. And then hopefully by the end of the summer, we'll have a better plan to be able to respond to the needs of our residents.
Thank you for that. And you hit it on the head. How do we not only bring those services together, but how do we make people aware, right? What is the communication? What is the campaign for informing the community on who they need to contact, what numbers they need to call? Because there's a serious gap in information, access to information. So, and it's the conversation we can have off on the sideline, but there's some other things I would like to discuss just in order to kind of undergird people more immediately than what we're doing, because it's cold out, and we're catching a little bit of a break, but a lot of this is happening on some of the coldest nights in this state. So it's very concerning, but thank you. I appreciate that.
Good luck to follow up.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Representative Paris?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, good to see you and the Deputy Commissioner. Quick question, because you did mention something when you were answering Representative Porter's question around the housing of students. And if I remember correctly, the last time you came before us during the last session, the Department of Housing was working in tandem with the Department of Education, the State Department of Education, I think, in trying to expend somewhere between 3 to, maybe, my numbers may be off, it's been a long time, maybe 3 to 8 million to help children who were facing homelessness in the schools. Now, could you just give us an update in terms of the impact of that program that you guys are working on? How many children have been serviced with their families? And also, is there a greater need moving forward? Thank you.
Representative, I don't remember a number that you're talking about. What I mentioned before is the 100 vouchers that we set aside for McKinney-Vento kids in the school system. And we have a dedicated staff working with the Department of Education and see how we can utilize those resources to those individuals that need it the most.
I appreciate that. I do know that it was mentioned not only with your department, but also with SDE. So I'll pull the information and then maybe we can just have a breakdown in the working group on that moving forward.
That'd be great.
Thank you so much.
Anybody else? I do have one comment to make, Commissioner, to round this all out. And this is something that I've been talking about nonstop for the last 2.5, 3 years. I want to know when the opportunity map for competitive grants for Eastern Connecticut has been shut down. We can still get the 4% tax credit across the board, but I want to tell you some of the comments that I have heard from people saying things like, yes, I'll preface this with a fact that I was at an informational session from Electric Boat yesterday with Congressman Courtney and a bunch of legislators, all from Eastern Connecticut, and they're talking about housing needs and Electric Boat. They had the largest growth in the state for a labor market of 3.2%, and the opportunity map shows that Eastern Connecticut, all of New London County, all of Wyndham County, and all of Talon County is really not acceptable to get the competitive grants, which go up to 9%. And I've talked to realtors about this in Eastern Connecticut, and they say that would help them out immensely. I find it absolutely abhorrent that we cannot change that map. That was done under and I really like the work that you're doing, but that was done under your tutelage with CHAFA. And what I heard from some of the CHAFA board members, some of them from Eastern Connecticut, that it was well known that it was going to impact Eastern Connecticut negatively, and it has impacted us. I see time and time again, I see housing advocates saying that Eastern Connecticut does not want to build housing. But I do not see that the state of Connecticut wants to see housing built in Eastern Connecticut. And I will fight till my co-chair is tired of hearing me say that we are not getting the same services in Eastern Connecticut. And it's absolutely true from realtors, from housing advocates who say that Eastern Connecticut doesn't care when we desperately care. But nobody thinks that we deserve the competitive housing grants. And I'm sorry, I want to know, when is that going to change? I wrote letters to your board. I spoke to your board. I wrote 2 op-eds to the New London Day. I have brought it up at meetings yesterday. It was brought up yesterday at the Electric Boat event, time and time again. And when people say, don't worry about it, we'll take care of it, it's not been taken care of, because I see housing projects languishing because of this. So can you tell me when that will change?
I will, if you allow me, I will do a little more than just what we're doing. So the opportunity map that the Senator is talking about, it was designed, not us, not CHFA, but Community Alliance and the Fair Housing Center, because they wanted to have a map where we could score and give some point to those communities. We have a QAP process, and we are going to start this year, go again. So we will review that map again, but I will love to have you part of those organizations, our advocates that are advocating to be able to do points to the low-income housing tax credit, to opportunities, to high opportunity areas where there are employments and there are transportation, which is one of the categories that have that. But believe me, I do care about New London, and you know that we have been providing some resources to some of the developments that we have in the area. But in addition to that, the program Build for CT, which is exactly to help those employers that are looking for more workforce. And we have a couple hundred of units working in New London, in 2 of the towns that the staff is working on those underwriting to provide the financing that they need in order to get these projects done.
So I'm going to tell you the same thing I've told the governor. When he says he goes to New London, I say thank you. I appreciate him going to New London. New London is part of Eastern Connecticut, but so is Norwich, Wyndham, Plainfield, Killingly, all distressed municipalities that cannot take advantage of any of the competitive tax credits over and over and over again. London is the closest tip to the other parts of the state is not into the weeds in eastern Connecticut. But when you cut out 3 counties, all of New London County, all of Norwich County, and all of Talon County, and you say that there is no reason to have opportunities. And what I hear from people is from people on your board who have said, well, nobody wants to live in eastern Connecticut. Well, I beg to differ. And then they say, well, we don't like your schools. I said, well, we can't do better schools because the funding comes from municipalities who can't grow because we don't get these competitive tax grants. And you just brought up transportation. And the administration insisted that we get rid of Shoreline East. Not down, we had 32 trains and we're down to 16 trains. And they said, nobody wants to go to eastern Connecticut. I beg to differ. I beg to differ. And I'm just absolutely disgusted that people do not want to deal with this issue. I can't stand it at all. And I will fight till my last breath sitting at this table here, because we can't get housing credits. We can't get transportation. We can't get education. And everybody says, well, what are you people going to do out there in eastern Connecticut? How come you're not growing? Well, we can't grow because nobody wants to take a chance on us at all. They cut every chance that we have. And you are a piece of this puzzle. And and when we have the largest employer growth in the whole state, the largest employer growth, when we have 2 of the largest businesses in the state from the 2 tribal nations, and we're more than willing for anybody to come live in our area, and we can't get help on any single front, whether it's sewers or water or housing or transportation or any of the other things that people talk about. I want to see that map change to give us the same competitive grant access. I'm not saying you have to give us the grants, but when you deny the access, that's the part that I can't get beyond.
Senator, again, you will be, I will be more than happy for you to be part of the next conversation, because as I said, that was not created by us. It was with the advocates.
But it was
looking
voted
at
on by the board of CHAPA, and you are the head of that board, Commissioner.
Absolutely, yes.
Thank
But but that's what I'm saying. You will be, we will be more than happy to have you in those groups so that you can see how that map was delivered. But at the same token, I do want to make sure that you understand that we have been working and that there are other resources that we provide to that region. And the Bill for City, actually, we have a project in Norwich that is working with the staff at CHFA to provide some
And we
some
appreciate the
financing.
4% grants. We want access to the 9% grant
Sure.
for others. So when other parts of the state are getting 9% and people try to placate me saying, well, we're going to give you 4%. We want the same access as everybody else. So thank you very much. And I appreciate all the work you do. I just will not let Eastern Connecticut not get the same treatment.
Sure.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Up next is the Department of Labor.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Why they clearly have a disparity. What's the answer to the thing?
Franklin sits on the board and Franklin said.
We are just transitioning from housing to labor, so please, legislators, have a seat. We have more to go.
I think it's still good morning, Commissioner. I'm not positive, but do you want to say a few words to begin with?
You have to turn the microphone on. Do turn the microphone on.
Yeah, she will. And if you have a few words you want to say then, or we could get right into questions, up to you.
Thank you very much. Senator Austin, Representative Walker, and honorable members of the committee. I'm Dante Bartolomeo, Commissioner for Department of Labor, and I'm pleased to be here with my team. You do have my written testimony, and I realize you'd like to get right to questions, but first, I would actually be remiss if I didn't share a recent experience that we all can be proud of. Last month, U.S. Secretary of Labor, Julie Su, came to Connecticut, and she made a visit, her first visit since I've since she's been secretary and I've been there, to our agency. And she chose our Connecticut's Department of Labor to host a panel on unemployment modernization, which was actually an enormous lift of a partnership with state and federal funds because she wanted to recognize Reemploy System and Consortium as an example of what's right. She also remarked that Connecticut is a national example of how to get the trust fund solvency, and that our legislation is actually being touted nationally. So Public Act 21-200 is being touted as a model. And so these are things that we have accomplished together as an administration and a legislature, and I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you for that. First I want to thank you for keeping the manufacturing pipeline initiative whole this year. Last year, there was an attempt to cut 1.2 million when we really needed to add money into that manufacturing pipeline. Again, I was with Electric Boat yesterday, who added 5,000 jobs in the last year and plan on another 5,000 jobs each year until 2033. And they also touted the part that their workforce is increasingly becoming diversified. Over and over again, they talked about the number of minority populations that are joining the shipbuilding workforce, to include women down on the yard. And I think that that's great. The other area that I think was really wonderful is I know that when the secretary was here, that she talked about WIOA and the fact that Connecticut uses WIOA in the best way they've ever seen and has access to jobs. So seeing as I'm usually the one that brings all the bad news out, I wanted to bring two good things out.
Thank you. And thank you for your advocacy of the MPI.
Thank you. And up next is Representative Walker.
It's Friday. We've been at this all week. I just have to say that. And after a while, it gets to us. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you for your opening remarks. There are so many things that you guys are doing, which is great. There are so many things in this budget that things are being suggested to be eliminated that are not great. You knew that I was going to say all that, right? Okay. I'm going to start with one that you probably didn't expect, but one that's very near and dear to my heart. And this is really not to you, but it's to the people that do negotiations towards the end of the budget operations. The youth employment line at the last minute was $5 million was stolen out of that line. And that was her, I never got that upset about any reduction until I saw that. Back in the late 60s, early 70s, there were 4 youth that went to that program because that program has been going on for a long time. And those people worked at SNET, and they all went to the summer youth program. And that summer youth program, those 4 individuals, 2 of them stayed with SNET and became major executives there. One became a Supreme Court judge and has done a fantastic job. And the 4th is talking to you right now. So when we think that these types of programs have no impact, we're so wrong. Last year, with the reduction and also with the increase in wages, which we want our children to have just like adults, no minimum, nothing below minimum wage, we had 10,000 applicants. 10,000 applicants, and we're only able to serve 3,000. That is a crime. It's not you, and I know that. I'm sorry you're hearing this, but I have to make sure that people that are listening to us hear the criminal activity of taking away money from our children who are trying and desperately need direction and guidance. So I hope, no, I expect the money to stay in that line. And I don't want anybody to touch it because I'm gunning for them. I'm saying that. The other one that you have, I'm gonna just deal with the veterans. The reduction in the veterans, we just heard about the needs of our veterans. And the reduction of the 245,000 by eliminating that program is simple. Because we need to make sure that we keep providing opportunities for people who are lost. So as far as I'm concerned, our veterans do not get enough services from us because they put their life on the line for us. We can only provide them with what's necessary. So I don't have a question. I know I'm not supposed to be doing that, but my colleague over there did it for 5 minutes. Mine was only 2. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Up next is Representative Paris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, good morning. How are you? I might be a little bit easier than my good chairs. The governor's budget eliminates funding for Workforce Clearinghouse. It's about $250,000 elimination. For clarification for the committee and for all those who are watching, is the Workforce Clearinghouse under the auspices of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the Department of Children and Families, and the Office of Planning, Research, and Organization? Can you clarify that for the group?
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the question, Rep. Paris. I just want to start by saying to Representative Tony Walker, we share your opinion that the youth are the folks that we can most benefit from bringing into this workforce. And I completely share your position on that program. I've visited many of them. I did not know about you, ma'am, but that's fabulous. As far as the veterans at DVA, we can get into that whenever you want. It's not being eliminated, it's being transferred, and we've worked with DVA to be able to pick that program up and offer it with more efficacy than we were able to. And to Representative Paris, the clearinghouse, we received $1 million of funds in our other expenses line last year. There was a changing of designation of what that was called from the budget that was signed and then what OFA called it. It was workforce programs initially, and then it became in the OFA budget clearinghouse. There was $750 million of that was expended, and there was a $750,000, I apologize. And there was a $250,000 allocation for a clearinghouse. We made many attempts and we were not able to get direction, nor was OPM on how that was to be used or with whom it was to be contracted. Sure. So it did lapse, and I believe that's the reason that it was suggested as a lapse this year.
And just before I head into my second question, a clearinghouse, and I think of those big checks and people showing up at their doors, but that's clearly not what it is. Just so people know that the Workforce Clearinghouse provides it. It's Friday. Laugh, people. That was a good one. Provides a systematic assessment, from my understanding, of the evidence of our programs and of our interventions that aim to improve the employment related outcomes for individual of low income. So we do appreciate that program, and I'm sure it makes a world of difference. My second question, and I'll yield the rest of my time back to the chairwoman. Does eliminating this funding completely mean that another body will conduct these assessments moving forward? If so, can you let us know which bodies will conduct those assessments moving forward? Thank you.
Representative Paris, that would actually be a question that I would pose back to you all, because I don't know what those programs are because we were never given direction with whom to contract or with what terms to contract. So certainly that's at the prerogative of the legislature if you were to choose.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All set, Representative?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Representative DiCaprio.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Commissioner. Just a quick question on the 20 positions for the UI, the unemployment insurance. Those positions are ARPA funded, is that right? This is under policy revisions?
Yes, Representative. We currently have staff that are funded by ARPA, which are temporary staff. They're called employment security intermittent interviewers. Our hope, if we were fortunate to receive this general fund money, would be that we could bring some of those temporary folks on as their term is due to expire December of 2024. We have 44 of the ESIIs, we call them, currently. And so the hope would be that this allocation would be awarded and we could bring them on as permanent staff.
I take it the workload is there, that you need these staff
Yes, sir, that and more.
and more. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Up next is Representative Dathan.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Commissioner, and to your team for your presentation and your comments in your letter today. Really wanted to kind of drill down about the lapses and deficiencies within the long-term unemployment program, the PDE. I'm a huge supporter of this, and I know other people on this subcommittee are equally as big cheerleaders of it than I am. Really just wanted to get some data about the number of folks that are being serviced and why, if we can do that for the periods 22, 23, 24, and an estimate in 25, so that we can see really why we are lapsing dollars. And I kind of want to be able to look at that. I know the governor did a really good economic report about the labor force in there. And I'd like to kind of look at those numbers in alignment. So if you could bring that to the work group. The second question I had really was about the apprenticeship program. I am a huge supporter of this because I think there are so many opportunities, particularly to enhance our childcare and folks who are receiving that sort of training. Can you also provide data on the number of apprentices that we have been able to service within that, both within the sort of DOL line item, which we've had, some small increase over that period, but if I can just get the data to support that, because I do think we need to offer our young people opportunities who, may not want to go on to a 2 or 4 year college, and this is a good opportunity for us to do that. I know you briefly talked about it in your testimony, but if you can just provide the data around that, I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Up next is Representative Harrison, followed by Senator Hartley.
Sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Commissioner. I'd like to go back to the 20 positions that you'd like for unemployment. As I recall, during the pandemic, there was just a huge spike in what you had to process, and ARPA funds provided for an increase in staff to get that handled. And we listened to, people are getting back to work, and I would expect that the load of unemployment claims would be declining. And not sure why we need to increase the staff to cover it. If you could speak to that, and in addition, bring us some data as to what the claims were through that pandemic and, where they are now, I sure would appreciate that.
May I speak to any of these now? Okay. Madam Chair.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. At the peak of the pandemic, we had 392,000 weekly filers. We do currently have 32,000 weekly filers. Staffing, we had at one point over 450 folks that were participating and working on the call center. We have now 105. We had 320,000 temporary workers in the ESII category. We now have 44. Federal funding is not there to support a call center, which is why it had been decommissioned in 2016. We brought it back during the pandemic because it was the only way to have access with our UI customers. We currently do not have federal funding for positions to be able to keep that call center running. So the governor's budget proposes that we would be able to keep 20 of the folks that are currently temporary and are are on funding that's due to expire December of 2024.
How does that compare with what numbers there were before the pandemic?
Before the pandemic, an average week would be about 40,000 weekly filers. Before the pandemic, we did not have a consumer call center. We had staff that were handling unemployment insurance out of the American Job Centers. But although that had been a change when the call center closed in 2016 because there wasn't funding to support it, it then became a model that was not sustainable when we were in the pandemic. So when our doors closed to the call centers, we had no access. So by July, we stood up a call center, which we have enhanced to be quite proficient. It able to do calls, email cases, texts, but that call center that was once supported by over 400 people, temporary people, is now being run with 105 people. Of those, 19 are temporary. I would like to be able to have permanent staff to better serve our customers on an ongoing basis after the federal funding runs out in December of 24.
Okay, thank you for that. And then what are we doing with the job centers?
The American Job Centers are run by the workforce development boards. We are part of a primary partner in 5 comprehensive boards throughout the state, 1 in each region is a comprehensive. What we do in those as Department of Labor, in addition to our partners, which are adult education and the voc rehab and the boards and some other programs, is we have case managers that are working for the boards and we administer the program for WIOA. So any of the WIOA or the JFIS, I know I'm talking in acronyms, but the reality is Jobs First Employment Services is the job training program, support program for folks who are receiving cash assistance from DSS. And so we administer that program out of the boards, out of the American Job Centers. We also administer the Wagner-Pizer program, which helps folks to prepare for job interviews, resumes, interviewing experience, some of that. And as well, the WIOA program, which helps people who are looking for jobs with job training and coaching and some other, and also overcoming obstacles like childcare and transportation when they're trying to apply for jobs. So we're a primary partner in there, but we are by no means the only entity in the American Job Centers. And there's career centers, which folks can come in and use the equipment.
Okay, thank you for all that information.
Thank you. And one last thing I forgot to say, the other thing is folks can access unemployment insurance in the American Job Centers, but it's through a Teams channel. So I have staff that are in the consumer call center that can be virtual, remote, and Teams with someone who may not have equipment of their own. And so they can go into the American Job Center, sit down and work with an agent through one of the computers there.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Hartley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, Commissioner and team. Thanks for being with us here. As I'm just talking to all departments, it'd be very helpful to us to have summary information of ARPA dollars unspent and those that will be ending, and then where we have the gaps about sustaining operations or initiatives. And then carry forward dollars too, if you can just kind of give us summary information there. And I just want to echo the remarks of our co-chair, Representative Walker, with regard to the youth employment program. And you know, we were flat-footed how this happened. And once again, you know, we're talking here and not, directing this at you, but, there's another part to this, and that is those workforce boards. Okay, this came out, those programs light up July 1. They have to, get that stuff in the pipeline and move it out in order to be able to hit that opening date. And they all went out and did that based upon that number. And then, whoa, so yeah, we had all those unmet applications, but it was all telegraphed and communicated that this was happening. And then all of a sudden it was like, nope, changed our mind. So that was a very unfortunate circumstance. And once again, I sure hope that that does not repeat itself. And then I just want to make a comment to you, and that is thank you for your work and advocacy and support on the workforce boards. And, there's been all this conversation, here and there about further reorganization of them and alignment. And I stand here firm to say that the map as it exists now is functioning, and we need to continue to support that. So lastly, Commissioner, if you could also bring back to us in our next visit the summary information of the Unemployment Trust Fund and its projections going out. There's been these conversations that, if we had ARPA dollars at the end of these cycles and we didn't have allocations for them, that would be one of the places that they would go. I would just like to see that summary and maybe the historical projections. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. May I respond to any of that?
Yes.
Thank you. So we will get that for you. The trust fund, I have 4 scenarios that we have run. With the current scenario being no additional funding would have us in a position where right now we have a loan of $121.3 million. We have 0 balance in the trust fund. We borrow as we need so that we don't increase any of the interest. There has been a total of $195 million that was put in through you all and the administration. We currently are on track to not have any additional food tax increase for the employers and to have the trust fund loan paid off and be able to start to pay benefits from the fund and accumulate a balance in 2026 if current conditions were to stay as they are.
And you say, and to pay benefits out of that fund in 2026?
That is our current track with nothing changed and everything remaining roughly the same. We do have and have crafted models for additional scenarios if there was an appetite by the legislature to put additional funding into it.
Yeah, so if you can share all of that with us, thanks so much.
Yes, ma'am, I
Thank you,
will.
Madam Commissioner.
Thank you. Representative Dathan? For the second time?
Apologies, I'm going in for the second time. And first of all, thank you to my colleague, Senator Hartley, for the question on the unemployment fund. That was one of my second questions. The other question I did have was around the upgrade. I know for the last several years, we have been working at upgrading the unemployment reporting systems and filing systems. And I just wanted to check in on that. As I also had some concerns that we've just done that, and now we're trying to centralize the IT functionings into DAS when I think, this is something that's important. And I see Senator Austin is raising her hand, so she might jump in on that one.
No, she's not.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. If you can share some light on where we are with that system and how we have been doing on that upgrade, because I know it's been going on for several years.
Yes, thank you, Representative. I would say that we are doing very well. We are doing as expected. A system such as that is traditionally said to need about 3 years working through so that it is working smoothly with all of the enhancements needed. Certainly, we stood that up in a pandemic. We had a 15-month moratorium because of the pandemic. Very proud of the fact that we pursued and it launched in July 5th of 2022. One thing that's really important from our perspective is to remember that a system such as this doesn't just launch and sit. We need to be able to maintain. We need to keep up with it. Otherwise, we end up in a position where, 20 years from now, we need a new system again. So we have been applying for and have been awarded multiple federal grants so that we could enhance parts of the system like integrity, like the employer's portal and those kinds of things. So we have a constant, probably a 2-year right now calendar of when and how we will make adjustments and enhancements. At this moment in time, we do have sufficient funds for, to go through the enhancements that we are working on in this next year or so. It does mean that we'd work with a vendor because we're part of a consortium. When this was first launched, the lead up to it was estimated to be much more expensive than it actually came to be. The state was looking at potentially $80 million to do this system. Right now, with state and federal assistance, the consortium relationship has brought that down to 60 million, and the state has actually put 25 million into it, 35 million with the feds. We do that with the vendor. The IT department has some, but some minimal interaction with that particular project. So I don't foresee the transfer of IT to affect this particular project.
So just to clarify, when you're doing these, I agree, this is a constant need for updating along the way to make sure it's up to date. I guess my concern is if we centralize the IT function over to DAS, we're going to have lose some of the ability to be able to update this in a proper manner, because you guys are the boots on the ground. You know what needs to be collected and what needs to happen. And I just have some concerns. I'm just flagging it for my co-chairs that, I'm a little worried about this, but I will let other folks weigh in as needed. But thank you so much for your presentation again. Thank you, Madam Chair.
If I may add to that, I went a little bit off on a tangent and would like to get back to the exact question. This project doesn't have our IT working on those enhancements or modifications or anything. Because we're part of the consortium, the 3 states have a vendor who does all of that. Certainly there's minimal staff involvement, but IT optimization has no impact on this particular project.
Thank you. All set? Representative Dathan? Representative Walker?
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner, for those last words. I'm sure they're appreciated by somebody. So I will leave that alone. But my co-chair and I's opinion about IT optimization. It's just something that we need to just pass over for a while. Thank you. The one other one that I saw was a reduction for the opportunities for long-term unemployment. Is there a problem? Do you feel that this is not doing its job, or is it that was just something you were looking for some savings and this was one of them?
Thank you, Representative, for that question. Actually, the program itself is something that I put on a pedestal. I've attended many of them. I find it extremely valuable. I think that the decision was based upon lapses and current spending trends. So in 2021, there was a lapse of 426,000. $26,000. In 22, there's a lapse of 718,000. In 23, there's a lapse of $1 million. And right now, we have only 4 months to go, and there's an expenditure rate of only 44%. So we are just trying to just watch numbers. It's not a policy or a programmatic statement in any way.
I don't know if you remember, you and I went over this. And part of the issues about the lapse was the timeliness of the contracts. It wasn't because they were not doing their job. It was because, as many of our agencies in Connecticut were experiencing, there was a lag in contract completion. Once the completions were done, the funding was then provided. So we don't want our vendors to be penalized because our government operations are not at a timely fashion. And I say that because there's also Youth Build that's embedded in this. And again, Youth Build is a program that was done with adult eds in New Haven and in Bridgeport, and I believe Hartford. Those programs are critical. When we have gotten a good system of getting our dollars out to the providers or vendors that we contract with, and it's within a 30-day window, then we will entertain that. But I know, and that's something that Appropriations knows more than anybody, because we hear from all of our vendors about how long it takes. Community action agencies are suffering through this. There are many other programs that are suffering through the fact that we do not turn around contracts timely enough for people to actually do their job. So at that point in time, once we do that, then we'll have a conversation about maybe utilization. But until that time, those contracts, because I have copies of those contracts and the dates that were put in there. So if you would like, I can bring them to the work group so I can show you the ones. But I do have the fact that it took 6 months to get the contracts done. So thank you.
Madam, may I make a response? Yes, you and I have had these conversations, and I would like you to know that we do take them to heart. And I'd like to share with you something that we have done in this last year. One of the things that we have done is, without adding any FTEs, we have, under Deputy Pizzella's leadership, we have reorganized some units so that we now have a just focused contracts unit that we've had for about 9 months or so now. And that unit is doing only contracts, and we are bringing in fiscal monitors and others. I am very pleased to say that we have improved greatly with that change, and that all of our contracts went out between early July and mid-November this past year. And we are now tracking expenditure rates and everything in a very systematic way. So thank you for your past feedback. And we have made some changes I'm very proud of the team for.
Well, I am too, but unfortunately you quoted 21, 22, and those were years that we aren't covered. So let's work forward in managing that. So right now, until that time, thank you. Thank you, Madam.
I see no more questions. Are there any more questions from anybody? Seeing none, you're all set, Commissioner.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. And just so everybody knows, I think we come back at 3? No, before that, 1. Yes, we have to finish DECD and DEEP and all the other.
Oh, golly.
It's Friday.
I think I neglected that. I think I eliminated those in my calendar. Okay,
All right.
thank you.
All right. See everybody at 1.